puzzly PC things, it's Jessica from Multiplicity and Me, a channel dedicated to ending stigma of DID, otherwise known as Dissociative Identity Disorder. We're also having to film using our phone because Jake broke our camera. He was actually mounting it up and didn't realise that the perth thing was not on the back properly, and it just fell out of the tripod and onto the hard desk below and then onto the floor. So we've got to go get our lovely camera repaired. So please bear with us if the quality is not as good as usual. But we didn't want to let you guys down, so we're persevering with phone footage. I'm really sorry. Back to topic. Drum roll! What's today's video all about? Well, today's video is all about covert versus overt DID. As voted for and chosen by our lovely supportive patrons, thank you guys so much. First of all, what do we mean by covert versus overt? Covert simply means hidden, and overt means obvious and out there. So the question really is, can you tell us more about really obvious DID versus really hidden DID? So the first thing that comes to mind is something I saw from did-research.org that says something about only 6% of cases were considered overt, with flourished presentations, somewhere between 5 and 6%. And when I followed the reference, what I could find was a reference from Paul Dell that basically kind of has a little more meat on the bones than just that. In Paul Dell's study, he states, "My own studies on the natural history of DID indicate only 20% of DID patients have an overt DID adaptation on a chronic basis, and 14% of them deliberately disguise their manifestations of DID. Only 6% make their DID obvious on an ongoing basis. 80% have windows of diagnosticability when stressed or triggered by some significant event, interaction, situation, or date. Therefore, 94% of DID patients show only mild or suggestive evidence of their conditions most of the time. Yet DID patients often will acknowledge that their personality systems are actively switching and or far more active than it would appear on the surface." Breaking that down, it actually means that 20% are overt in the way that their DID has developed, and 14% of those 20% can camouflage, which I guess is where we feel that we fit as a system. You know, we are very differentiated, quite obvious identities, which of course means in the comfort and safety of our own home, we're able to be ourselves. For things like YouTube and media and the like, I suppose we are, well, quite easy to navigate example of what DID looks like. We have like identifiable indicators like Janie's glasses and the different accents and stuff. But really, you know, we're not the normal, I guess, representation with DID. We are that 20%, more over that 14% that can camouflage and does hide. And that's always been our natural defense. We don't think about it. The alters just all act like me, or at least some sort of semi-version of me. They drop their accents. And so much so that Jake is a part of us that's an actor. That's his job, that's his role on the inner world. And we can see how that reflects externally, because he's an actor to ensure that we would always be able to have that availability to come and act as whatever was needed, I guess. Like as the version of me that people wanted to see. Jake would do that. But why do this? Why camouflage at all? Well, like I said, for us, it's never really been thought about. It's always been a natural reaction to do that. From as far as I can remember. All of us would only ever be ourselves in our own company or around a very trusted few. There were a few occasions I know at school that I was called out for being the American girl, and things like that I don't remember, but I'm obviously guessing that was very much Jake's influence. And speaking to a camera, it kind of holds that illusion that it's only just us in the room, which is how we started learning about each other initially in much more greater detail than we had before. We started making vlogs and vlogging to each other by using like a really crappy old phone that we had at the time, just to kind of, you know, talk about stuff to one another, and that helps break our communication down. And I guess that's kind of how we accidentally got into making videos for YouTube, because we were like, oh well, You know, we found this beneficial and we know we can speak to a camera, so why not bring it out to the open world? It makes so much more sense because, after all, this disorder is a defense mechanism. Appearing as one is safe. It allows to kind of give that deception that we are a functionable whole person. And despite the stereotype of the condition, it actually in fact does quite the opposite of attention seek, as parts often prefer to remain hidden and purposely not draw attention to themselves. We are that 14% that are overt, flourished, but still hold that ability to be able to remain hidden. When asking about covert versus overt on social media, the ring system actually came in with a different perspective. They talk more about ableism and kind of that expectation to be one person, which is something I suppose to keep in mind for future research potentially, purely from the shame and the fear of being open. So I will read to you their hot take. It's a hot take: covert versus overt DID is probably just a lie and is baked in ableism surrounding how individuals are punished for showing any type of neurodivergence, including being a system, and because DID OSDD brains are wired to protect, being covert is ingrained into how we present. While this is but a theory, almost every system I've talked to has mentioned purposefully hiding their altered differences in public, from vocal changes to physical presentation. Regardless, many systems are more comfortable expressing who we are if given the option in a safe environment. It can vary day to day and alter to alter as well. Some alters may be better and more aware of the need to mask as a singlet, while others might act out and blow the system's communal cover. In some cases, it could even be stressful or uncomfortable for an alter to mask. I'm willing to bet covert versus overt DID isn't black and white. Furthermore, clinicians ignoring the impact of ableism on our everyday life is unacceptable. Our brains are wired to protect, and in a society that punishes us for acting non-neurotypical, there are observable effects on DID. This is why it's so important to have people with relevant lived experience working in fields studying specific disorders. Oftentimes, neurotypical researchers can be divorced from the reality of that ableism, and ignorance can creep into our diagnoses. So that was the ring system's hot take. I'd be interested to know what you guys think about that. A system who identify as the 6% that are unable to remain hidden is the alternative system. And they explain beautifully what may cause this presentation to happen.
So a lot of systems on YouTube say that they needed to be covert to survive. And I know that I talked about how I needed to be overt to survive because I needed to make my abusers fear me or give in to what I needed. Anything I needed. I needed to ask for it, and I needed to make them listen to me to get it. And so I began to see the fear in their eyes, or see the shock. I noticed that really early on, and I learned how to use that to my advantage to get what I needed because I was being completely ignored.
And of course, any links for any references or contributions used are all in the description below. Please go and check them out. So 20% are classed as overt and 80% are classed as covert. Let's talk more about covert systems. We have to be honest with stigma and stereotyping here, and let's be real, we are more the stereotype of what someone would understand someone with DID to look like. Vastly different personalities, you know, often we tend to dress in just something a little bit identifiable for that alter as well before we make a video. It kind of separates us, it helps give that feel. It also makes that alter just a little bit more comfortable to appear on camera. So yeah, of course, you know, we are very much kind of what's maybe expected, but here's another reminder that I know we've said in a few videos, we are a minority, not a majority in how we present. We are quite unusual presenting. In most cases of DID, alters may be difficult to distinguish. There may be very few notable changes in behaviours, mannerisms, tones of voice, anything like that, except maybe those closest to that person can notice those mild subtleties and changes, or even just to be identified from the person themselves. You know, they're able to kind of say, I know this part does not belong to me, I know this expression, this feeling, this, even though we may think along the same lines and may have the same similar thoughts, it's not my thought, it's another part's thought. They're able to identify with that, whereas maybe to you and I, or you know, someone else, or a mental health professional, that may not be noted at first. So they may be able to feel and notice that disconnect, but externally there may be kind of not enough notable differences for anyone to pick up. So whereas we kind of go out about and make sure we're kind of staying camouflaged and hidden, a lot of systems that are covert, the majority of systems that are covert may not necessarily have to do much of that. But of course, being compared to systems like us, who are kind of overt and very distinguished and identifiable, that can also feel very invalidating, and I kind of need to raise that as a point, because I totally understand that. I get why that would feel more invalidating, and I guess even some people may think that we're kind of playing into that stereotype or stigma because we are so differentiated, whereas their case and most cases they're aware of aren't so bells and whistles like we are. But this is just how we are, and it's just how we've always been. I think it's just being very self-aware, again, that we are a minority kind of presenting system, not a majority. We are just one lived experience. This is our tale. However, very distinguished, differentiated alters are not the norm. I think people as well, even us included, have to kind of feel that, okay, because that alter likes that thing, I can't then like that thing, because otherwise we're not differentiated enough and people could judge us, which is so wrong. You know, we shouldn't have to feel that way. And again, as the years have gone by, we are just unapologetically us. A lot of systems have crossovers. We are, after all, you know, as James said in the last video, kind of alters of one whole. We are parts of one root, whatever you want to say or call it. So yeah, of course there's going to be similarities and crossovers because we are sharing the same brain, and that shouldn't be something to be avoided. And I think, you know, sorry, I'm getting on my soapbox here, I promise I'm nearly done. But I think kind of forcing that person to believe that every alter needs to be completely distinguished actually moves them further away from recovery. If we're talking about the steps of recovery, integration, which is kind of about bringing those barriers down, that is kind of being put on hold because you're purposely saying, you know, you need to almost split yourselves up further. You need to be completely divided. Whereas actually that's counterproductive to recovery. So to anyone out there who may feel like sometimes invalid because they have a lot of crossovers with a lot of their alters, that is completely normal. And again, that's kind of, I guess, a stereotype and expectation that we bring upon ourselves, us included. That's kind of what we believed for years, is that we all had to be completely vastly different. And if suddenly somebody was in the system was enjoying like the same thing as another person in the system, it would be like, no, you can't do that. You can't like the same music. You can't like the same song. That's wrong. And actually, no, that's right. It actually shows that you guys may be closer together. So it's important. Okay, off my soapbox, sorry. That was a big, like, squeaky rant. I think I've wanted to get that off my chest for a while. Anyway, back to our quote. So, Dr. Dell states that 80% gave windows of diagnosticability when stressed or triggered, and 94% of patients only show mild evidence of their condition most of the time. So no, despite the stereotype, DID is not obvious most of the time. My little disclaimer here is that there may be a lot more to this quote, as it was in fact from a book that I do not own called A Clinician's Guide to Understanding Dissociation by Kluft, released in 2009. I don't have this book to fully evaluate, so I could kind of only go by the little bit of reading I was able to capture. So if you're eager to kind of know how this evidence was gathered, then obviously do try and pick up a little copy and give it a read yourself and see what you think before making a whole conclusion. Just using these facts and stats generated from Dell and Kluft, that's what it tells us. And that's another puzzle pieced together. Good job, you guys, for becoming more educated. I'm really proud. And as always, please do speak to a relevant mental health professional if you feel that you need some support. And a reminder that whether or not you have DID, each part of you deserves self-care, self-love, and compassion. Okay, take care, everyone. Bye!